It started quietly. Eli was just a child when the world around him began to fall apart. He learned early that love was unpredictable, that peace had to be earned. So he built a mask. A polite smile, a careful tone, a sense of humor sharp enough to hide pain. By the time he was grown, the mask had fused with his skin. He was charming, witty, adaptable, a mirror for other people's needs. But beneath the surface, he was hollow. He felt like an empty house that still looked whole from the outside. That's what unhealed trauma does. It splits you in two. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of a family is the unlived lives of the parents." Eli carried that tragedy in silence. He didn't collapse suddenly. It began with sleepless nights. The constant hum of anxiety, the sense that something was wrong even in calm moments. Then came the rage, the guilt, the self-doubt. He pushed people away, then begged them not to leave. Love turned into a battlefield, and he was both soldier and saboteur. Therapy told him it was anxiety, maybe depression, but labels couldn't touch the truth. The buried pain that never learned to speak. Because when trauma is ignored, it doesn't disappear. It hides, it waits, and one day it demands to be heard. Eli began to unravel slowly. He started hearing voices, not from outside, but from the parts of himself he'd silenced for years. He filled notebooks with scribbles and fragments, trying to capture thoughts that no longer obeyed logic. Friends said he'd changed, but the truth was, he'd simply run out of strength to pretend. That's the secret of madness. It's not insanity. It's exhaustion, the soul refusing to keep performing. When someone has spent a lifetime hiding pain, the mind eventually fractures under the weight. It's the psyche's last rebellion. Eli began seeing patterns everywhere, in lights, in conversations, in random coincidences. His brain, starved of safety, tried to create order out of chaos. Unhealed trauma plays cruel tricks like that. It disguises itself as intuition, obsession, or divine messages. But beneath it all is the same desperate cry, "Please see me. Please help me." The world, though, doesn't understand such cries. It calls them madness, labels them, medicates them, fears them. Eli became another case, another warning. But he wasn't weak. He had simply been strong for too long. Jung called this stage individuation, the painful process of meeting your shadow. For Eli, it didn't feel spiritual. It felt like drowning, like facing a lifetime of ghosts that refused to stay buried. Rock bottom wasn't a moment. It was a slow, quiet surrender. One day, Eli began to write, not for clarity, not for healing, but for survival. Page after page spilled out, chaotic and raw. Sometimes just one sentence repeated again and again. "I didn't deserve this." Those words became his turning point. They gave him permission to feel, to be angry, to be sad, to finally be real. And in that honesty, something long forgotten stirred. Hope. Healing didn't start with positive thinking. It started with truth. The truth that he was never protected. The truth that his pain mattered. The truth that madness wasn't an enemy, but a message. So he went back to therapy, not to impress, not to perform, but to finally weep for the child who grew up too soon and the man who never felt safe. He wasn't fixed, but he was no longer lost. He learned that healing isn't becoming someone new. It's remembering who you were before the pain taught you to hide. The mind breaks when we ignore it, but it rebuilds when we listen. If you've ever felt like you're losing control, remember this: you're not broken, you're buried. Begin with silence. Write, cry, breathe, listen. Healing starts not when you escape your darkness, but when you finally sit inside it and say, "I'm still here." Because the world doesn't need perfect people. It needs honest ones. People who have walked through their shadows and returned with light.